Last week, the Isle of Man welcomed delegates from around the world to the Small Countries Financial Management Programme. 22 officials representing finance ministries, central banks and regulatory bodies came to the Isle of Man from as far afield as the Caribbean, Pacific, Indian Ocean and Africa. So what is the programme all about, and does it represent good value for the taxpayer's investment? On Agenda this evening, I talk to programme participants and officials about the value of what's taught and whether it's worthy of our support. I began by asking Chief Executive Mark Shimon about the programme's origins.
It's been great, and it's been great to be back having the in-person programmes after a couple of years break, really. So we had a virtual programme last year. We didn't do anything in 2020 because of the timing. So we put together a virtual programme from scratch last year, which was great, but I don't think you can beat having people meeting together and sharing their ideas and just building up those relationships and contacts, which hopefully they'll have both with the island and with themselves for years to come. The idea originally was an idea from Tim Cullen, who used to work for the World Bank and was, after retirement, was in Oxford teaching on something called the Said Business School's Oxford Programme and Negotiation. Tim was also on an off-island member of what was then the FSC, and Tim, because of his international experience, he felt that there was a gap where the big international organisations like the IMF or World Bank, whilst they were keen to help small developing countries, they didn't quite, there was a gap that they weren't perhaps putting forward solutions that worked as well in a small country context, and therefore there was a niche where somewhere like the Isle of Man could share its experience and expertise, but focus things as to what might work in a small country context. So that was the broadest concept, and that fitted into international development, perhaps a different way of looking at international development than perhaps people looked at in other areas. But it's targeted at countries who've got financial services sectors or issues to do with regulatory, and everybody nowadays has got regulatory issues and taxation issues and financial management issues to deal with. The second strand to that at the time was one of, this was back in about 2008, and of course you can remember at the time, financial crisis, a lot of aggressive attacks on the likes of the Isle of Man and small jurisdictions as tax havens, and so this was seen as an opportunity to show how the Isle of Man was taking real practical steps for to actually help countries to improve their capacity. So it's capacity building. In terms of the positioning there, it was an opportunity for the Isle of Man to say this is something that we support, and it's a tangible way of saying we are part of the solution rather than the problem.
The challenge that you have is the range of the levels of development of all the different participants. So you'll be going from countries which are even smaller than the Isle of Man. I mean, the Isle of Man calls itself a small country, but there are countries with even smaller populations, to much larger countries, but also countries who have reasonably well-developed financial systems like the Isle of Man, to countries that have very little by way of development of their financial systems.
Our sort of broad sort of concept is countries below a population of about 1.5 million, and countries that are eligible to borrow from the World Bank. And what we are looking to do is, what people realise is that regardless of the size, often enough, the problems are very similar. And there's no right answer to any problem, but understanding that the problems they face, they're not alone, that they have people who are going through the same challenges, maybe looking at things differently. So that's an important part of getting together. And people will pick different things out of it. Basically, what we're doing is, it's pretty unique, really, and it's got maybe 3 strands. Most of the training in this sort of area, particularly the bigger organisations, is very technical. We call them technical silos, so they'll do regulation in great depth. But what is missing and still missing is more of an overarching thing, which is looking at helping people with what used to be called the softer skills around leadership, transformational change, negotiation, making things happen, persuading people, whether it's within organisations or if they're dealing with international organisations.
Practical common sense, as the listener might call it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the ability to think, other people are approaching this in a different way? Can we learn from them? But what are the practical things? And so we have that mixture of some technical training, but that's sort of more softer skills. We also then ask them to bring what we call a work-related challenge, and that's something that's a problem that they're dealing with. And they work on that throughout the program. And what we find is they sort of recast the program, the problem. What is it what do they have to do differently to solve that problem? And you find that they're looking at it, so the wider issue. They might have to talk to much more about persuading people as opposed to solving a technical issue. But they present those challenges, they work on them here, and then we ask them to sort of come up with an action plan that they're going to put into effect when they go back. So what we're doing throughout the whole of the 2 weeks is about trying to get practical solutions that they can apply when they go back to work, both for the challenge but in a wider context as well. I would say, countries have to decide where they're positioning themselves in relation to helping those countries which are in an even worse situation than themselves. As part of the international development aid, we're doing it in a slightly different way, but we're targeting it for a real ability to have a meaningful impact in dealing with some of the key aspects of what the UN calls Sustainable Development Goals, particularly around capacity building, which is about getting the foundations right in countries so that they can grow their economies, they can help take people out of poverty, and we can cover a number of the other Sustainable Development Goals around gender equality, etc. So, this is a practical way of the Isle of Man contributing positively to assisting these countries to improve how they govern themselves and organise their economies. And I would argue we do it very well. We do it cost effectively, and should the Isle of Man government want to use that, it's something that is a very tangible way of saying we are actually making a positive contribution in an international context. And if you look at the international circumstances now, you need as much positive perceptions of countries, particularly where there are lots of countries out there ready to attack.
If we can help provide the tools for other countries to effectively manage their own affairs and not need support from the developed countries around the world, that has to be a good thing.
I would argue that. As I say, it's an argument that plays out. Different people have different views on that, and that's democracy. And but this is about, from our perspective, putting on something of high quality that's got a good high reputation internationally, and we can do it in a way that is very beneficial to these countries and their organisations, not just the individuals. And we provide something very positive in that space. It's a niche that we do well, and the Isle of Man, I think, gets a lot of credit outside the Isle of Man for that.
So what do the programme participants think?
My name is Caroline Wangambada. I come all the way from Fiji, which is in the Pacific. We are a small island economy with a population of about 800,000 people. And our close neighbors that you would easily know are Australia and New Zealand. They're about 3 to 4 hours away by plane. I work at the central bank. I'm an economist by profession, and I look after financial markets. And I'm really happy to be here, really grateful for the opportunity to be invited to participate in this small country's financial management program 2022. I work at the central bank, and As you know, in a small country, we lack a lot of resources, and we lack a lot of knowledge, especially on global issues. And even more critical is lacking the capacity to deal with a lot of the issues, even though are global, do have an impact on our small island economy. So to be here in a group of other small countries that are more advanced than Fiji, such as the Caribbean and Africa, is a great opportunity for us to be able to learn. So yes, I'm really thankful to be able to share that on radio today.
And I suppose, many people will know where Fiji is, but they possibly wonder what are the sort of the mainstays of the economy in Fiji, and how impacted by global financial issues actually is Fiji. Are you self-sufficient in many ways, or are you as dependent as most other countries in the world appear to be on international finance and global trade?
Thank you, Phil. We used to be a agriculture-dependent economy back in the 70s, before we brought in more manufacturing industries, and that brought in a lot of a few multinational corporation overseas companies. But over the last 15 to 20 years, we have been largely dependent on tourism. So yes, you can imagine we were badly impacted by COVID, and the whole tourist industry shut down for many months. So the economy declined by over 20%, and now with the reopening of our borders from last December, we are slowly recovering. It will take us 2 to 3 years to fully recover to hopefully to 2019 levels, but as of now we are doing our best, giving support to public servants, and lending by the central bank at concessional rates to the lending institution, which then in turn would pass on those concessional rates to businesses, all with the objective trying to support businesses in the private sector so we could all recover quickly, and get the growth going.
And a number of questions then about the actual course itself. I suppose the obvious question is, how did you hear about it? And then why do you think it's so important? And how valuable has the course been to you?
Thanks, Phil. Well, I'm the third person, as far as I know, that is here in the program. I've had 2 other colleagues who came. So we've been lucky to have, continued to come, I think, consecutively outside of the pandemic the last 2 years. And we didn't, last year, I understand, was a virtual forum. Yes, really important to us. I came with the expectations that I would learn more about and understand better what small countries' issues are, what's going on right now. And for me personally, I looked forward to learning more than just what was related to my work in the central bank, which is markets. And here I sit down and I learn from, very distinguished speakers, lecturers on financial regulation, on tax issues, leadership, overall. So these are things that, I don't deal with directly, but are very relevant to me as a prospective and inspiring leader in my own organization. So yes, very, very relevant, and I found it really useful.
And I suppose the other thing about the conference is you are meeting with counterparts from all over the world, from countries in a similar position to yourself. I know when the whole idea of the Small Countries Financial Management Programme was first mooted, the Isle of Man government felt that this would be a really useful exercise, if nothing else, but for the opportunity for us all to get together as small countries to actually understand that many of the issues that we face are remarkably similar.
Absolutely, Phil. We have our own regional forums. So in the Pacific, we have an opportunity to meet Pacific Island countries, neighbors. But this is unique in the sense that it cuts across the whole globe. So it allows for Pacific participants to share their knowledge and experiences and learn together on the same platform, because we all identify with each other as small island economies, and learn about the issues that are affecting us, and more importantly, just sharing our experiences on how, what the status quo is for all our countries, and then be able to share with each other how we are dealing with those issues, which for me has been very insightful and very useful, because, as I said, Fiji is a little bit less advanced in dealing with some of these issues. So I've really benefited from sitting and listening to policies that we could think about and put in, how we could act upon, act better in dealing with some of these issues. So it's really been beneficial, and I think it's unique in that sense. So this year we've had countries from Africa, from the Caribbean. There's 3 of us from the Pacific, and there's 1 from Europe. So we've had representation from across the major, most major regions of the world, and I think it's really unique and useful in that sense.
And then I suppose final question, what have you enjoyed most about the actual programme? And I'll have to ask, what do you think of the Isle of Man?
Okay. From the course, Phil. Well, the course has been above my expectations. It's been, the topics and discussions have been relevant. They provided me with the tools that I could use, and provided me with a greater insight on how I could deal with the issues. On the program, I really love the topics of leadership. It's helped me now to go back and maybe adopt a little bit more of an adaptive leadership style rather than programmatic, which is top down. So very useful in that sense, because we normally as a central bank, we're like talking to banks on what they should do, but to be able to walk alongside them and engage them. Engage with them in a better way. So it's definitely helped me rethink the challenge that I brought with me, and I'm going to definitely go back with knowing how I can address my challenge better. Isle of Man, it's like being at home. I mean, I come from an island nation, so and the weather has done us, has been good to us. We have not had adverse weather here, so it's so beautiful to be in a very familiar surrounding, and to be learning, learning and discussing issues that are relevant, and having a group of lecturers and professors, authorities that have shared their views from the heart, and I think it's been truly useful. And I really like the cause where it's brought together practitioners. We had the Isle of Man authorities come and share with us on the first day, and it's been really useful. And in Oxford, we had the professors there. So we've had a really good mix of theoretical teaching as well as practical experiences. And this country is really beautiful. I mean, it's almost like a home away from home, except with the more flashy buildings that you have here. Because at home we have just coconut trees, but very impressive. And maybe, Phil, I just want to add, we've had a superb team. I really want to thank Steve Pickford, Tim Cullen, excellent people, and especially the team that has been working more closely with us, Mark Shimon, Paul Fisher, Elaine Moretta, and our assistants, Harry Collette, and also Kate Atkins. And we've had a really great team that has supported us and given us everything we want, even buying our energy drinks, so people like me who have a problem staying awake during the day can do so. So they've been part of the success of our learning during these last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Phil. My name is Brian Aesop. I'm from Windhoek, Namibia, which is a small country in Africa, small in population but big in territory.
Yeah.
So I'm here. I've been in the UK for 1 week in London, in Oxford, and then my second week, which we are finishing up today, in the Isle of Man. And I'm privileged to be here. I have enjoyed my week here in the Isle of Man.
And what do you do in Namibia?
So I work for the central bank in Namibia, and I'm the general counsel and the director for exchange control. So essentially my job entails taking care of the legal affairs of the bank and then also making sure that our financial system is stable by administering exchange controls.
Okay, and then in terms of the actual course, how have you ended up here? How did you hear about the Small Countries Financial Management Programme, and why did you think it was important to come and join the programme?
First of all, I would like to applaud the Small Countries Financial Management Centre for introducing this program so many years ago. One of my colleagues attended this program about 6 years ago, and I could see the impact that it made on him personally, and also the challenge that he brought with him at the time was, for example, to implement a revenue agency in Namibia. And at the time, we were in a transition period, and Sam Shivuti, who's a former colleague of mine, attended this program. He made me aware of it, and Sam went back and he implemented exactly the things that he came to look answers for on this program. And today I can proudly say that he has implemented the revenue agency in Namibia. So the impact that this program make on a global scale is so phenomenal that I don't have words to describe it actually. And I just want to applaud and appreciate all of those behind the scenes, the Mark Shimons, the Paul Fishers, the Elaine Moretas. I want to applaud them and just commend them for this program. And also the Isle of Man government, who's ultimately funding this program. I think this is a small gesture which a small nation does, but the impact is so global and so phenomenal that it is their effort and their contribution towards global peace and global governance and improvement of global systems.
And I suppose then, from the perspective of most people listening to this program, they'll be thinking, well, setting up a revenue agency, surely that's just the kind of normal part of government. But how big a deal, how big an impact would that have actually had in Namibia?
Well, and I need to contextualize it. It's not that we didn't have a revenue agency, but what Sam did, he basically came back and after having done studies, after having contributed to the project, he ensured that our revenue agency becomes more autonomous outside of the conventional Ministry of Finance, by that giving it more teething powers or powers to go after people that don't pay taxes, and really as an autonomous body pursue the aims and objectives of a revenue agency. And the impact of that is that we can generate more fiscal prudence, we can generate more money for government and government spending. And as a result, it is much more prudent now in our country how our tax affairs are being administered.
And of course it's a big deal, isn't it? Because if you're not able to collect the necessary revenues and the taxation, it means that your country is impoverished because it can't provide the necessary public services.
Absolutely, Phil. You couldn't have put it better. I think any country needs to have an effective and efficient way of revenue collection. And the impact that this program has made, again, in my country, can be felt in the revenue agency that was set up. I mean, now we have an autonomous revenue agency that is premised on global systems and global standards. And Namibia can compete with any other country in terms of revenue collection and the overall administration of our revenue.
I suppose then the next questions I would be interested in having answers to are, what did you make of the actual programme, and were there any particular bits that you found most helpful?
The way the program has been structured from beginning to the end, we started with leadership on Henry V, and today we ended with Henry V, and I don't think it was coincidental. There was a deliberate attempt on how the program was packaged. It started with leadership, and we know that leadership, which is, if you look globally, I think the world at large is in a leadership vacuum and leadership crisis. And to emphasize and impress the importance of leadership is really what stood out for me. And the way we should endeavor to be better leaders today, the adaptability, being programmatic at times, but that we should not be static in our leadership approaches. And there was other topical issues like fintech, regtech, e-commerce, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, regulatory issues that confronts all of us, and the similarity of our challenges and how we could converge to look for possible answers and ways to deal with these emerging issues globally. That was really the golden thread throughout this program. We spent 1 week in Oxford, in the UK, in Manchester, and then we came to the Isle of Man, a beautiful place. I made a comment last night and said, this might be my retirement home if everybody will allow me to. But it's a beautiful, people are very hospitable. The environment is just beautiful. I never knew about the Isle of Man until I heard about this program a few years ago. And I've been always reading up on the Isle of Man here and there a little bit, and I'm impressed. Last night we had a great reception at the Lieutenant General's house, and people are just beautiful, lovely people.
My name is Angelia Williams. I work at the Ministry of Finance back in the Cook Islands, and I'm the Director of Major Projects and Procurement Support.
And I suppose the very first question is, why did you come on the programme? How did you hear about it, and why are you on the programme?
Back in 2018, we had Mark and Tim, who are the executives of the program, come over to the Cook Islands and undertake a negotiation course for 1 week. So that really interests me and a few of my colleagues. But we also had previous colleagues, which is now my secretary, who came here in 2018, right after that program, and came back to the Cook Islands and encouraged us to come here. So now that I'm a director, I'm here to learn. I'm here to meet people from different countries, small island states, because then we realize we have the same issues. Just didn't realize that when we were back home.
And in terms of the actual programme itself, what have you actually got out of the programme? What do you think you've learned, and what are the most? What was the best or most exciting part of the programme for you?
The most exciting part of the program for me was meeting the different people from the different small island states and understanding their experiences so that I can apply some of that back home. The only difference between us is the scale of the size between us, but all our issues are the same, and the content that's been provided the last 2 weeks are applicable, are practical, that I can take back home and implement.
Because, of course, that's one of the hard things about any sort of programme or course, conference, whatever. It is being able to judge whether it's actually going to be of any actual use to you, or is it just an excuse to get out of the office. But from what you're saying, this programme has been particularly useful.
One key thing for me is, reflecting back on my leadership. The different ways of using tools so that you can persuade your staff. So there are the different tools you can use when you're negotiating to get everyone on the same goal and the same vision, and so that there's ownership and that collaboration of working together to reach the goal. Back in our small island state, we don't realize we're doing it, but now there is a structured way of doing that, and that was the result from this 2 weeks of being in Oxford and here in Isle of Man.
What did you make of the Isle of Man? What were your impressions of the island?
This is my first time here in Isle of Man, and the first thing I thought of was I felt like I was at home, except when I got to meet the people and understand the history of Isle of Man. It's small, it feels home, but it's very well developed. You have all the smart people here working for you, and that has been my challenge that I brought here, is trying to build capacity and capability back home so we can be a small nation but have all the smart people working so we can sell that as a service for our country, and that's how I see Isle of Man.
What can you tell us about the Cook Islands, bearing in mind most people on the Isle of Man won't have much of an idea other than an approximate idea of location?
Right. So the Cook Islands has a population of about 17,000 people, very small, and we're scattered amongst 15 islands. Some islands are near Fiji, near Samoa, and the other islands near New Zealand. So we're quite scattered. We have oceans in between the islands, so we have to fly by air and boat. We can't drive. Very sunny, humid. And we have a lot of summer times, and winter is only 16 degrees. We have a depopulation issue because we use New Zealand passports, so we have people who leave the Cook Islands and live abroad in New Zealand, and I think that's one of the similarities I found out yesterday when we met a few of the politicians, also people in cabinet and in business also.
Paul Fisher describes himself as the programme's MC. I asked him about the relevance of the programme.
My name's Paul Fisher, and I'm the Programme Director of the Small Countries Financial Management Programme. I do other work as well. I'm involved at Surrey Business School at the University of Oxford. I'm an Associate Fellow. But in terms of this job, the Programme Director really takes all the participants through the learning journey. So I work with Mark Shimon, the Executive Director, in terms of designing the programme, selecting faculty, and then I take everyone through the programme. So I'm essentially the MC, and we have lots of different sessions. Our programme is very practically focused, so we very much focus on the specific policy challenges these countries are facing. So we have lots of learning sessions during the programme where we look to see how we can apply what they learn in the classroom to their very specific policy challenges.
And certainly that's been one of the common themes from all the participants I've spoken to, is how well suited the programme is to their actual needs.
We're very conscious that we want them to have very practical tools that they can take away and apply almost on day one when they get back to their countries. So we're very keen not to make it too theoretical, too academic. And I think, over the last 10 years as the programme has evolved, we've tried to make it more and more closely aligned to the very specific challenge that these small countries face.
Having conducted the programme now, the 2 weeks are over, you will have had plenty of opportunity to hear from and talk to the participants. What would you say are the common themes?
I think there's a lot of common themes. Obviously they're all small countries, and certainly over the last 2 years, particularly during the pandemic, I think they've all felt very alone in terms of the challenges they face. So I think one of the key focuses of this programme and key messages is the idea that they're not alone and they're all in this together. So I think they've derived a huge amount of support from each other in terms of the challenges they're facing. And these small countries are facing a number of really significant challenges. Of course, climate change is a huge challenge. Many of these small countries are absolutely on the front line of climate change. They have challenges with their public finances. Many of these countries are very dependent on tourism, for example. So the last 2 years has been really devastating for their economies. So they have a lot of challenges, and they're constantly battling up against the larger international organisations, the larger countries. So I hope what we like them to get out of this programme is to have a greater sense of belief in that they can make a change and they can punch above their weight on the world stage, and hopefully we've given them the tools and the confidence to do that.
How do you manage to get all these people to contribute?
In terms of the speakers and I think they're all. Obviously we pay them, but they're all sort of really committed to the programme. They see the benefits of it. So we've been lucky. We have such a diverse faculty, both in Oxford and in the Isle of Man, and real experts in their field. So we've really covered a huge array of topics. We've covered some more technical topics in terms of how you deal with corporate, how you deal with governance in particular countries, how you deal with an inspection from the Financial Action Task Force, for example, how you deal with some of the taxation challenges. So we have those technical lessons and sessions, but we also really focus on, I mean, I don't like the term soft skills, but we really focus on the skills, their personal leadership skills that are required to meet some of the challenges they face. So we look at persuasion, influence, negotiation, how you can engage stakeholders, and leadership. So we cover a lot of those as well. So it's really exciting.
The Manx public listening in won't know an awful lot about the small country's financial management. It has been operating, as you say, for about 10 years now. Why would you say it's worth the investment that the Isle of Man government puts in?
I mean, I think it's incredibly well targeted. So it is making a difference to these countries. And of course, the Isle of Man is a small country as well, and it's faced over its history many of the challenges these countries have faced as well in terms of sort of setting up viable jurisdictions and moving from finance centres to business centres. So, I mean, I can't think of any development programme really which has such significant benefits related to the money invested in it. So we did an evaluation, for example, about a year and a half ago, and it really does change governments and the way they work and the way they put in place regulation. So I think it's making a massive impact. I mean, a colleague of mine, for example, spent an hour and a half with the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines just a couple of months ago, and he was saying how it had made such a big difference in terms of giving his leaders, his civil servants, his finance sector, the tools and the methodologies to really reform and for the benefit of the people. Because, of course, finance is the lifeblood of so many of these countries. And if that's run in a competent and a strategic way, it can have enormous benefits. So I think the Isle of Man should be really proud of what they're doing with this programme, and we're very, very grateful for their support.
An independent evaluation report in July 2020 concluded that the programme had delivered identifiable, sustained improvements in the capacity and performance of both participants and organisations. The relevance, effectiveness and efficiency of the programme were all rated as excellent. The participants I spoke to certainly spoke very highly of the programme, but can we afford to continue supporting it? Please get in touch with Phil Gorn at manxradio.com and let me know your thoughts and views on the programme. But for now, I'm Phil Gorn. Guramayu. Thanks for listening.